Can awakened Yuji solo the Heian Era? Now I know what you're all thinking, we barely know anything about the Heian Era, so how the hell is this video possible? Why not just see if he can solo the culling games instead? Well, to be honest, you're completely right, kind of. Almost all of the Heian Era sorcerers that we actually know of were in the culling games. For example, Uro, Yorozu, Uraume, and of course Big Daddy Sukuna. But I am still deliberately choosing to make this video about the Heian Era for two key reasons. One, everyone, including myself, wants to see or hear more about the Heian Era in general, so this is a really good way of diving into it. And two, all of the Heian Era sorcerers stated above are going to be much more challenging for Yuji to fight in the Heian Era than they would be in the culling games. And why is this? Well, because in the culling games, they all inhabit vessels, meaning that Yuji can target the barrier of their souls, which will lower that output and potentially kill them. In the Heian Era though, the sorcerers Yuji will face do not have such a weakness. I also just kind of want an excuse to talk about slightly more headcanon fights like the big three vengeful spirits and some other Heian Era forces that have been mentioned throughout JJK. As always, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe if you want to see more Heian Era content. Maybe even I'll write a flashback at some point.
Okay.
But anyway, let's get cooking. Okay, before sending Yuji back to the Heian Era, we're first gonna determine how strong awakened Yuji really is. And in order to give him a fair chance in the golden age of Jujutsu, I am gonna throw a twist in and allow him some time to train and get much closer to his full potential. I'll start off by giving him some time to practice his domain expansion and get it to special grade level refinement. And then I will allow Yuji time to fully master reverse curse technique and even improve his blood manipulation abilities, meaning that piercing blood and flowing red scale will become available to him. And finally, there is the matter of his shrine. In the JJK community, there is currently a few basement-dwelling nerds who are debating the topic of whether Yuji could change his target from the barrier-dividing souls to the actual soul itself. Now, I'm somewhat of a basement-dwelling nerd myself, so my opinion on this is that yes, Yuji can cut the normal soul with dismantle, but just like when he targets the barrier, it does require contact to use. My logic is, if he can perceive the soul and is able to locate and target the barrier dividing two souls, then I see no reason why he shouldn't be able to do the same but for the actual soul itself. Many people then counter this point by simply saying, well, why doesn't Sukuna target the soul too then? And my response to that is, he can. We literally saw him target and slice Mahito's soul way back in the beginning of the story. As for why he wasn't doing this in the final battle though, that's easy. It's Gege and he really just doesn't give a single fuck. Because people are so split on this though, I will simply draw two conclusions for each fight, one where he can slice the soul and one where he can't. Either way though, the preparation time training that I'm going to give Yuji will allow him to increase normal cleaves output a bit and also allow him to master throwing normal invisible dismantles that come with Shrine. But obviously these regular dismantles are still going to be much weaker than Sukuna's because Sukuna is Sukuna. Okay, with Yuji's training complete, let's chuck his ass in the TARDIS and send him back in time to the Heian Era. In case you're confused, the TARDIS is a time machine from, oh, who even cares? Let's just get on with it already. Bunch of freaks, man. So then, Yuji Itadori has arrived in the Heian Era and is ready to start running the gauntlet. As he arrives, the Fujiwara clan higher-ups detect a disturbance in the force due to Yuji's presence being similar to Sukuna's. So they send out Takako Uro, captain of the Sun, Moon and Star Squad, to investigate this new troubling presence. The sky-manipulating sorceress known as Uro will therefore be Yuji's first challenge. And of course by challenge, I mean warm-up fight because this battle is not close. Despite how strong Yuji is, physical attacks and hand-to-hand combat won't really help him at all against Uro because she can warp and bend that shit away before countering with a thin icebreaker, just like she did against Yuta Okotsu. Yuji is definitely faster, but not quite fast enough to blitz Uro, since she was able to comfortably react to Sendai Yuta, who would be somewhat relative to Yuji in speed. However, Uro can only choose to deflect attacks that she can see coming, meaning that a flurry of invisible dismantles would likely take her down pretty easily. A multi-directional attack like Supernova would also work very well, but considering Uro doesn't have reverse curse technique, I think a surprise blast of dismantles will likely finish her off. Don't get me wrong, Uro is hella strong, but this is probably a low to mid diff fight for Yuji. He won't even need soul dismantles or a domain expansion. Similar to the Fujiwara clan, Uraume would sense a disturbance in the force too. It's a presence very similar to Sukuna's, which makes Uraume slightly concerned, so they decide to go check it out. And this means that Yuji's next opponent will be none other than Uraume, the Frozen Star, also known as Sukuna's personal chef and butler. Using my incredibly high IQ, I deduced that Uraume would be somewhat relative to Jackpot Hakari in physical stats. And yes, that deduction is from a 99% off-screen fight, but whatever. Jackpot Hakari is definitely not a whole blitz tier above or below Yuji though, meaning that Uraume should be able to keep up very comfortably with Yuji. Uraume's big area of effect attack, called Frost Calm, will definitely be a problem for Yuji, but given that he can cleave on contact, he should be able to just shatter any ice that he's trapped in. He can also just heat his blood to melt it like Choso did. The real problem for Yuji will be avoiding and blocking the dangerous spikes of ice that Uraume launches at their opponents. Now, dismantles will probably land a few times, but Uraume has good enough RCT and durability to survive a few. What Uraume doesn't have, though, is a domain, meaning that Yuji will win mid to high diff due to his special grade level domain expansion. Uraume also does not have 4 arms, meaning that they can't keep Hollow Wicker Basket's hand sign up while defending themselves at the same time. So as soon as Yuji launches that domain, it's pretty much over. Yuji beats Uraume mid-diff. The result would not be any different if we assume that Yuji can actually deal soul damage with Dismantle though, because it requires contact and Uraume is a very difficult sorcerer to get close to due to the massive range of their ice attacks. He would still have to end it with a domain and Uraume would still get mid-diff. Anyway, after an entire day without any meals, Sukuna would start to wonder where the fuck Uraume has wandered off to, and I can imagine he'd be getting very frustrated. Yorozu, who has been keeping an eye on Sukuna from the shadows, realizes that if she goes out and saves Sukuna's chef, then she might finally win Sukuna's heart, and maybe get some of that malevolent meat too, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, boy.
And so after a day's rest, Yuji is faced with the construction-wielding Yorozu as his third opponent. Now, Yorozu is genuinely leagues above Uro and Uraume. Her curse technique is so broken, and even though it's very cursed energy inefficient, she has made it incredibly dangerous. I mean, Yorozu is literally stated to be top of the Heian Era in terms of output and cursed energy. She is not to be messed with. First of all, Yorozu uses liquid metal that maintains its physical properties but can still change its shape and volume through semi-autonomous cursed energy control. Whatever the f that means. Basically, she controls liquid metal, which can be used for multi-directional attacks and for forming shields to block heavy blows. She was also able to compete with a holding back 15-finger Megana in physical stats, which may sound kind of unimpressive, but trust me, that is crazy impressive. The real danger for Yuji, though, is that insect armor, which in theory multiplies her physical strength, speed, and durability by a lot. Yorozu basically got inspiration from insects that can carry way more than their body weight. That's pretty much what the armor does for her, it just multiplies her stats by a lot. Not only will Yuji's normal dismantles be too weak to penetrate the armor, but he might actually be at a disadvantage in hand-to-hand combat, which is a very rare thing for the GOAT Yuji Itadori. By further enhancing his physical stats with flowing red scale though, he may be able to actually close the distance and then land a contact cleave. Considering Yuji has insane durability and reverse curse technique, he should actually be able to abuse the exact same weakness that Sukuna did. He just needs to put up a fight long enough to exploit Yorozu's cursed energy inefficiency and then land a killing blow with cleave. It would definitely come down to a domain clash with them fighting inside the domain expansions, and again, that's a pretty 50-50 fight. So as a totally unbiased tiebreaker, I'm gonna say that Yuji can actually target the soul. So if he makes contact with Yorozu, it's over. He's literally a walking, talking soul split katana at that point. Basically, it's an extreme diff 50-50, but I'm gonna give Yuji the dub and move on. Since Uro never reported back to the Fujiwara clan though, they would soon send out the 5 Void Generals to rectify her failure. Now, we obviously know all about this lot, so I'm gonna keep this section nice and concise. Yorozu, the opponent that Yuji just beat, was stated to have literally soloed the 5 Void Generals that work under the Fujiwara clan, meaning that Yuji should actually just be the same. He might even slam them even harder than Yorozu did, to be honest. The remainder of Uro's Sun, Moon, and Stars squad would then also have a crack at Yuji, but given that they were said to be similar in strength to the 5 Void Generals, it really should just be another Yuji dub. And also, Uro was their captain, and we've already said that Yuji beats Uro low to mid diff, so there's that. No, this is not a Heian Era downplay. These squads were probably very, very powerful, but the thing is, sorcerers like Yuji Itadori and Yorozu are on just a completely different level. Now, everybody should have figured out by now that Yuji definitely does not solo the Heian Era, because he has no chance in a 1v1 against a full power king of curses in his prime. Don't worry though, because I actually have an even more interesting question that really needs answering. Could Sukuna have actually been defeated in the Heian Era if Yuji Itadori was part of that big final jumping that we were told about in chapter 238? Now let's say that Yuji Itadori earns the Fujiwara clan's respect after defeating their celestial squads, which is actually exactly what happened when Yorozu beat them in our timeline. The Fujiwara clan would then take Yuji in and inform him of a secret plan to bring down Ryomen Sukuna with the help of Angel and the remnants of the Sugawara clan. We know that Sukuna actually won this battle in the original timeline, but would the presence of a fully realized Yuji Itadori actually turn the tides on Sukuna? And yes, for this fight, we are going to assume that Yuji can directly target and damage the soul when making contact. Because Sukuna is not inhabiting a vessel, he will not be aware of the soul and therefore cannot consciously protect it or heal it like he could in Shinjuku. Now, there is still a very good chance that Sukuna just cuts everybody down where they stand, including Yuji Itadori. And this is even more likely when you consider there probably wasn't a Gojo around to do some major damage first. However, when faced with an abnormally strong sorcerer like Yuji Itadori, we all know that Sukuna would want to test the waters and have a little bit of fun. If Yuji then takes advantage of this and finds an opening to drive a load of soul dismantles into Sukuna, then he may actually be weakened enough to lose the whole battle against everyone. Even if Yuji can just sever a limb or two, it might actually give them the edge because Sukuna won't be able to heal it back with reverse curse technique. The problem here though is that even if Yuji does take advantage of Sukuna's confidence, he still won't manage to deliver a fatal blow. He will only manage to weaken Sukuna to the point where he then loses the jumping. And as soon as Sukuna realizes what Yuji has done, it's game over. He's literally getting the Kashimo waffle treatment, the Ryu special as some would call it. So even if Yuji does enough damage for the others to actually end up defeating Heian Era Sukuna, Yuji Itadori will still die regardless. It's also just crazy impressive that Yuji can defeat most Heian Era sorcerers that we know about. But then again, we really don't know many at all. Thanks a lot, Gege, you menace. Just before I end the video though, there are still a few special bonus fights that actually need discussing. And by special bonus fights, I actually mean I couldn't find a way to fit them into my fun little alternate timeline, so we're just gonna have to look at them separately. First up is obviously Kenjaku. Now, despite not having a clue what curse techniques he would have in this time, it's still a safe bet to say that Kenjaku has a few hundred years of experience. It's implied that Kenjaku was actually from around 700 to 800 years before the Heian Era, due to him forging a binding vow with Druv, who was actually from way before the Heian Era. But at the very least, he was implied to be around Tengen in the Nara era, which was also before— oh, whatever. Do you know what? The point is, he's just hella experienced, okay? Now, assuming that he's got an open domain and a Heian Era level curse technique or two, I would say that it's probably an extreme 50-50, just like Yorozu. And then finally, we have none other than Sugawara Michizane and the other unnamed vengeful spirits. Now, in the canon light novel Thorny Road to Dawn, Gojo confirms that Sugawara Michizane does actually have the Six Eyes and the Limitless technique. Gojo also admitted that Michizane might genuinely be a challenge for him, and if that really is the case, then I'm sorry, but Awakened Yuji gets absolutely fried by this sorcerer. And considering that all the big three vengeful spirits are implied to be somewhat relative, again, Yuji just gets fried by all of them. I don't really need to be able to scale shit here, I can just use my brain to figure out that Yuji is probably not winning that fight, you know? And god, writing this video is really making me realize how much is missing from Jujutsu Kaisen. Anyway though, that does it for today's video. As always, make sure to like and subscribe, feel free to join the Discord and follow me on Twitter, links below. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you in a bit.